So hello from Green-Mopeds in London. So today we're following up our static review of this Aidea AA Cargo with a ride review. So we're just taking this bike around to another base in southwest London, and we thought we'd give you a bit of an overview of the bike, how it rides and stuff like that. So to start, as I said on our static review, Aidea are out of Tokyo, and one of their best references is McDonald's in Tokyo. So they're using these bikes for sort of like a Mac delivery, and we'll talk about the platform part in a little while. But just to start at the beginning in terms of the specs. So there are two models, and this bike has a different category to the other electric bikes that we sell. So the L1E is the 50cc license. The L3E is the 125cc license. And then you have two categories for three-wheelers. One is the L2E, which is three-wheeler 28 miles an hour. And then there is an L5E, which is three-wheeler over 28 miles an hour. One of the interesting things about this, as we're talking about licenses, is what is the license that you need to ride one of these bikes. So as you know, if you have a 50cc bike or 50cc equivalent bike, you can be over 17 and you do a CBT. But if you're what I think works out to be over 37 and you passed your test on your 17th birthday, then you can ride a 50cc moped without doing a CBT. Okay. And then if you are wanting to ride a 125cc licensed bike, i.e. electric L3E that goes over 28, then you would need a CBT or greater in all cases. This bike falls into the three-wheeler category, and it makes it interesting because if you are one of these people who are over 37, or at least pass your test on your 17th birthday, or got, in other words, a pre-2001 driver's license, you can ride either the 28 mile an hour bike or the 45 mile an hour bike straight away. And the reason for that is, if you look on the back of your license, you will see an A category, which is the full motorcycle license. And if you check on that, if you see at the end of it 79 with a 3 in brackets, that means that because you passed your driver's license before 2001, you get the ability to ride any three-wheeler, no matter what power. Okay, so in other words, on a historical 2001 license, you can ride either the 45 mile an hour one or the 28 mile an hour one, whereas you couldn't ride a two-wheeler 45 mile an hour one without doing a CBT. Okay, so I guess it gives you a bit more flexibility if you have a fleet of people who are sort of more mature and you want to get these bikes out and you don't want to rely on people to necessarily having to do a CBT, although a CBT is a good thing. You could say, well, if it's on a three-wheeler, they can just get on it, whether it goes 28 or 45. Okay, so it's something that you need to check. Basically, look at the back of your license and see if you've got an A with a 79 code brackets 3 on it. Okay, so that's that. In terms of the bike itself, it's this one. This is the 45 mile an hour one. Has obviously two wheels at the back. 2x2 kilowatt motors at the back. Okay, so 4 kilowatts. That's continuous. So that's the amount of power that you'll see stated on your V5 when you get it. Okay, so continuous power. 4 kilowatts. So that is actually the same as the Super Soco CPx, and the reason to connect bike like this to a Super Soco CPx is that the Super Soco CPx is the battery of bike of choice for delivery right now. All of the sort of fleet guys haven't standardised necessarily, but it is the one that they're mostly taking. Okay, so it's got the same power as a Super Soco CPx. It goes 45 miles an hour in this version and 28 mile an hour in the L2E version. CPx goes 56, although some of the fleet people are having that speed reduced. And the reason that they're doing that is for two reasons. One, speed limits in most cities, well especially London now, is 20 miles an hour anyway. And two, it's a bit of a safety thing, or getting points on your license thing, or insurance thing. Okay, so when you are obviously getting into fleets, you're having many bikes, and you're having many different riders who are sharing these bikes, and you need to take out policies, and a lot of them need to cover the fact that they've got sort of fairly young people riding them and stuff like that. I need to look into insurance on this bike actually, as it is a new category. But anyway, I'm sure the likes of Lexham will cover it. So as we're stationary, just to give you a quick look at the dashboard, so you see there's a couple of trip counters, battery, we'll come on to that, and range. So with 80% left, basically, it says 40 miles. Okay, we are riding this on a very cold day. I think it's still -1 when I left, and not sure we will get that today, but that is with one battery. So as we're talking about batteries, again, we can compare. So the Super Soco CPx with one battery is a 2.5 kilowatt hour battery, and this has a 3.85 kilowatt battery, and you can have two of them. Okay, so if you notice it says, with 3/4 of the battery left, I've got 38 miles. So sort of if you do the maths on that, you're talking about 50 per battery, and that should be greater than a CPx per battery, just on the pure fact that you've got 4 kilowatt motor, and on a CPx you've got a 2.5 kilowatt hour battery, and this one you've got a 3.85 kilowatt hour battery. Okay, so it's 50% more, so you should get more range out of it with the same motor or same consumption of power. Okay, so, and you can have two batteries, and they are under a little compartment underneath the left hand side of the seat. One thing to say is that they are not removable in a traditional sense or in an easy sense. It does require a screwdriver and things like that, so I guess that is one advantage. But if you could get a good 80 miles out of it, which is the sort of standard or general quoted shift requirement, then you might be okay anyway. Okay, I know a lot of these bikes, they're running 16 hours a day, and they literally have to be running all the time. And that brings us on to the platform, as in the platform at the back. So this bike is, it's made for delivery. It's got two wheels. It's got a 50 by 50 platform behind me. And if you compare again, the Super Soco CPx maximum carrying capacity, including the rider, is 150 kilos. Okay, so, you could say that's, one rider plus passenger, both 75 kilos each, for example. On this one, the loading capacity is 248. Okay, so nearly 100 kilos more. And again, if you're into fleets, then you might say, well, okay, that means fewer trips. If I carry more, I don't have to go out so many times. Or the other way is more trips, or delivering more goods for the same amount of use of the bike. And that is a consideration. So behind me, there is this platform, and as I said, you can put a 50 by 50 platform, and then the height can go, as high as that load capacity will allow. Okay, so one of the things that the importer is doing is also being able to provide a warm stroke cold top box. Okay, so you can have partitions within the top box so that you have a warm section and a chilled section. So if you're into food delivery, that might be an option for you, because obviously delivering hot food is a bit better than delivering cold hot food. Okay, so 248 maximum carrying capacity. Okay. So again, we're just, as we're stopping, look around the dash. So here you've got 2 USB ports, which is obviously important for the guys with their apps and stuff like that. Down here you've got the windscreen wiper and the screen wash. Okay, so obviously that's quite handy. That's where you fill it up, the screen wash. And then down here is the charging port. So this is a fast charger option. Fast charger by default. So you get an actual connector on one end, looks like that, and at the other end it's got a 13 amp plug, which enables you to charge this bike in 3 to 4 hours, which is the same as the 15 amp charger on the CPx. Okay, that's per battery, I think. Okay, so it's all about keeping the bike running as long as possible. Okay, so in other sort of stats, dimensions, 2.02 meters long, said it's 180 kilos. It runs on 13-inch wheels, so to the back to the front. It's got what you'd expect. This is as I said, it's a 125cc equivalent, and therefore it has to have either CBS or ABS. This one has CBS, so CBS means if I pull the right brake lever, both front and back wheels are braked at the same time. Okay, and I'm probably not showing it off too much at the moment, but there is this tilt system. Okay, so here you see, and this is defined by what this lever is doing here specifically. This enables the bike to tilt around corners. Okay. Obviously, when you're carrying loads, you want the load to be as forward as possible, which this one is because it's literally sitting over the back wheels, and you want it to be as stable as possible. And on a 3-wheel platform, that's what you're likely to get, because the platform is being sort of maintained stable by the tilt system. Okay. So, as I said, you can turn it off by using this lever here, and then you would be only riding upright, which is allowed, or technically possible, although corners might then suddenly become an issue if you try to do that. And this one is the handbrake. Okay, so be wary that if you do stop the bike, one of the first things you should do is to re-engage, i.e. pull the lever towards you, keeping the bike upright, because you can topple it over if you don't do that. Okay, so something to be aware of there. Okay, in terms of things like the grant and all that, unfortunately the government does not recognise 3-wheelers in its electric vehicle categories. It doesn't recognise L2E or L5E. So unfortunately there is no grant on this bike. As we said yesterday, as of 3 weeks ago, just before Christmas, OLEV reduced the grant from 20% of the value to £500 max on 125cc licensed bikes, and £150 on 50cc licensed bikes. So in any case, L2E, L5E are not recognised. So unfortunately no grant. And then I guess we come down to price. So as a result of that actual grant change, again, if we're comparing the price of a Super Soco CPx with 2 batteries is now £5,000. Okay, the price of this bike is more like £9,000. So it literally comes down to some of the economics of, again, for the fleet guys when they're calculating all of this stuff, how much you can keep this bike running, how much can you deliver in one go, etc., etc. So it's easy to say, oh, that's too expensive, but you have to bear in mind that if you think about, well, 248 maximum load capacity, range is, I would say, more in this bike. I'll be surprised if it isn't. Then it might work out that the maths state that this is a better option. Or of course, if it's the only option, you know, if you're carrying a lot of weight, it might be just that something like a CPx isn't capable of doing it within the sort of bounds of the warranty and usage. Okay, so it isn't just the price to look at. Okay, then of course you get all the advantages of riding an electric bike, penny a mile, lower servicing costs because there's no motor to muck about with, etc., etc. Okay, the only other things probably to tell you are colours are red or white by default. Obviously, if you're getting into this stuff, you possibly want your brand on this bike. We've had some interesting conversations recently about people who want their bike in a certain panel colour which isn't the default panel colour, and is it better to take a standard colour bike and add your logos over it than to try and put a specific panel colour? Simply through accidents and stuff like that, it becomes a bit of an overhead. So this bike obviously can have that sort of thing done to it, but it might be that you just sort of logo up the back box or something like that, because that's probably one of the more secure places in terms of damage. Okay, so we'll come back in a minute or a bit later when we're past the road, but for now, hopefully that will give you an idea of how this bike operates, and we'll come back and show you it at a bit of speed going down the A3. Alright, back shortly. Okay, so we're back on board. We are now cruising along on the A3 going out of London. As you can see, I'm doing 35, no issues with that. I guess there's a few other things to tell you, obviously. So some of the things this bike doesn't have, for example, is it doesn't have modes. So lots of the electric bikes have, gears, essentially high 1, 2, 3 or high and low and stuff like that. This bike doesn't have modes. It does have a reverse mode though. If you think about it, if you added on, this big weight and it's 180 kilos already, moving this thing when it's stationary is potentially a bit difficult. So you can use the reverse gear, which is underneath the right throttle. Okay, it doesn't have an alarm, which is something that you'd probably want to think about if you are going to buy this bike. And I guess if I have one thing to say about the windscreen wipers, is good, especially in this country when it rains quite a lot, but to get to that switch to turn them on and off, you have to obviously release the throttle and then muck about finding it, because it's not really visible behind the right hand handlebar. So ideally you would put that on a normal sort of flicker switch, directly accessible without letting go of the handlebars. But that's a minor thing. In terms of the ride, you are leaning against a back panel, back of the seat, so the pad. So you are fairly upright, which is probably a good way to sit if you're going to be travelling around for a long period of time. Obviously you have to wear a helmet, and I haven't had any issues with the fact that I'm 6'1", 1m85, and wearing a helmet and hitting my head. So that's all fine. The sort of roof and the sort of structure around me doesn't get in the way to me seeing behind me at all. This bike is a little bit wider when you add on the mirrors than a normal bike. So normal bikes are typically about 70 centimetres wide, including the handlebars, and this one's a bit wider than that. Having said that, I wouldn't be too bothered about filtering or anything like that. People whiz around on the MP3s and they're filtering, so maybe if you had a very large top box on it, people might suddenly decide that this is more of a van than a three-wheeler and might get offended by it, but other than that. So as you can see, cruising along at 40, 41 at the moment. That is sort of in these conditions as fast as I'm going to get. I mean, I think it's still below freezing today, and this bike was outside last night, so I'm not expecting to get the best out of it. And then just to sort of clarify the price, on the static review said about 9,000. That is in fact the L2E version. So the 28 mile an hour version, single battery, is that price. This L5 version, so the 40 plus mile an hour version, is just over 9,000, so 9,200. And those are the prices for the single battery. Okay, so if you want to add another battery, you're talking about essentially £2,000. Okay, which is sort of par for the course. Silence SO1 batteries 2,200, TC Max battery is about the same as well. CPx battery is about, if you got it off not including it being on the grant, that would be about 1,500, I think. So it's not too surprising. So I hope you found that useful. I don't think there's anything else to add to this review at the moment. I guess some of the uses that we've been talking about, delivery all the time, and that obviously isn't the only use for this bike. Tradesmen who want to just be able to nip around without having to take a van, which obviously now with all the congestion zones and ULEZ zones and all that sort of stuff, if you can fit a 420 litre top box on the back of this, you will be able to get a fair amount of set of tools on it. Just seen a blood bike going about, and the lab bikes who take tests between labs and doctors' surgeries and things like that. That would be a use, because you can have a refrigerated box on this. Disabled people we've had interest from, because they need something that will keep itself upright with very little trouble. And I guess one of the other things that I haven't mentioned is, if you have, the conditions like now where it's going to be icy and snowing, would you rather be on a bike like this or on a two-wheeler? I think I know what I'd rather do. So, think about that. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. Obviously, we have this bike available if you want to give it a try or trial. Happy to do that. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at hello@green-mopeds.com, and please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we've got the static review of this bike plus many others that we supply. And thanks very much.